Record at this computer. All right. We have Jen Dalton here. Welcome to the Brick and Mortar Visibility Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, welcome. Jen Dalton, everybody is coming in from Australia at a very early 6:15 a.m. and she looks just beautiful. She's all like fresh as a daisy.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know. Maybe you can relate when you know you've got to get up early. I think I woke up about 6 times last night, just making sure that I'd set my alarm right because I didn't want to miss it. So yeah, but I'm here and I
You're
feel
here.
great.
Yeah. Well, you look good. Maybe later this afternoon, that wall will hit a little bit, but that's where we are. I'm at 2 p.m. where my wall is hitting. So I have my little Celsius here. So anyway, I'm so glad to have you because you are a dance studio owner, a very successful dance studio owner, and not a new dance studio owner. You have had your studio for 30 years, 30 plus years.
Yeah, we're into our 30th year this year.
That's amazing. So super congrats to you. That's awesome. Okay, let's back up though. Let's just do did you always want to be a dance studio? Was that always your passion or vision?
No, I just fell into it, and I was 14 when I started, so I was quite young, and I was actually approached by someone to teach their daughter dancing in their garage. So I was assistant teaching where I was learning, and this little girl was in my class, and her mum asked if she could just have some extra lessons, and so I spoke to the studio owner that I was teaching for and asked if that was okay. And she said, yes, absolutely, go for it. And yeah, that's how it started, with one student in their garage paying me $3 for a 45-minute lesson.
Love it. I love it. That's how it often starts with us.
Yeah.
So can you give us the like cliff notes of your journey of how you got to be where you are?
Yeah, no worries. So that student, I started teaching her, and then she said, "Oh, I've got two friends. Would you mind if they came and joined?" And I said, "Yep, absolutely. That would be great." So we're running these classes, and so, but at the end of that year, we did a little concert on their back veranda at their house, and yeah, they did three dances, and it was a lot of fun. They got organized a little tiny trophy for them all, and that all started. That's been going on for now 30 years as well. But yeah, and then from those three, the following year, word got around at the local school. And so that three became 12. And those 12 were then moved into my parents' double garage. And then that 12 became 30. So this is all
Yeah.
just word of mouth throughout the school. That's when I had to get local halls. So we have like a scouts hall and girl guide hall. So I started moving in there, and then we were there, and yeah, we just grew. At the point I was doing my last year of school, I had 100 students, and so yeah, so I basically finished school, and I had a successful business, and so I just kept going into that. Loved it. Yeah, I love thinking back because it's so different now.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, how I was then and how it ran is totally different to now. But anyway, I'm really grateful for those days. So then what actually happened, the studio kept going at about 20. I'll just caveat, I am really bad with my memory and exact moments in time. So I'm just going to general about
okay. We don't know any different.
I know, but people might hear my story and go, I'm sure she said it was 21. I'm sure she said it was 19. I'm like, I don't know, general, a
Okay.
long time ago. And then, yeah, and so I felt a need to learn again, to do something, and I didn't know exactly what that was. So I just started studying psychology and communications because I figured they were going to be helpful in whatever I chose to do. And that then led me into joining the police. And so I trained and became a police officer. And so while I was running the studio, I was a police officer. So I did both of that for 13 years. I was in the police.
No
Um,
way. Oh my goodness.
yeah. And so it was also there where I met my husband. So very early on. So I was still training, and I met my husband who was in the police already. And so he quickly then became part of the business. So we're I mean, I was running it as a business, which is a very different term to what it means now. But yeah, he was really innovative and very just very smart. And so before websites were a thing, he got the studio onto a website. Before anything was really, there was no Google, there was no
Mm-hmm.
smartphone, there was none of that. But just common sense told him to start a website. He just used common sense to start doing SEO, which
Mm-hmm.
was, I don't even think it was a thing back when websites first started.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so honestly, a lot of my success is thanks to him and that, which we can go into later. But anyway, back onto my journey. So he's joined. We got married, had our babies like pretty early, well, straight away once we got married, and yeah, just continued to build the studio. I just continued to study as well. So even though when I was on maternity leave from the police, I started doing my fitness certificates as well. So personal training and group fitness training, just that continual need and want to educate and better myself. I just something I truly believe in,
Mm-hmm.
still to this day. And yeah, just kept growing, and then got to a crossroads where the business was going really well. The my work at the police, although they were always very accommodating for me, I was really stretched. I felt like I was at a point where I could no longer give more to each. Plus, I had a young family as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just got to this point where, and I just said to my husband, like, it's either we just plateau now and keep going the way we are, or we need to just let me put my energy into one thing and do it really, really well. And so
Mm-hmm.
at that point, that's when I resigned from the police. And so I
Mm-hmm.
went full on at the studio. At that point, also, we we put on my mum as a major staff member. And that was a big deal because that was a very big financial commitment, because we said to her, we'll replace her income. She was working full time at an accountant's office.
Okay.
We'll, replace her income. It was a big risk for us financially, but the best investment we made, because she almost, you know, 4 or 5 times our income with the work she could do. So, because it
Mm-hmm.
left me then to do other stuff in the business.
Right.
And that is, I go back to that as to how powerful it is to invest. And just sometimes you just have to take that risk, a calculated risk. I'm not saying, and we are not massive risk takers, my husband and I, but that was one that did pay off.
Mm-hmm. So was your mom your first hire, or
No,
did you have teachers?
I did. I had
Okay.
teachers. They were all homegrown though. So
Sure.
at the point where, they became assistant teachers first, and
Mm-hmm.
then as they got to 17, 18, they then became
Mm-hmm.
I call them senior
Yeah.
teachers.
Yep.
And I talk about the evolution of how I was able to let go. And that happened really slowly, that trusting someone else, and, that
Yes.
relinquishing of power, which it was hard, but yeah. And I look back, and um, at first I was in a position where the studio that I was teaching, which was still a community hall at this point, there were two studios. One was upstairs and one was downstairs, and there were actually windows downstairs. And so I was teaching upstairs, and I could just continually look down to make sure everything was going okay. And it wasn't that I didn't trust the teacher, it was just this thing inside me. It's like this letting go of control. It's
Yeah. Can we talk
terrible.
about that? Because even people that aren't in our industry, dance studio industry, that is a legit thing of letting. I was talking to a realtor, and, even her letting go of control in communication with, she wanted these, well, they came to me originally, so I should work with them originally. And she's growing a team. And I was like, I'm not in the realtor business, but I think that might be an opportunity for you to, if you want to grow your team, you need to enable your team to do the work. And that is so, so hard. And we have windows in our studio too. So it's really hard for me to even be at the studio when somebody else is teaching, because they may not be doing it exactly how I would do it, or the pace of the classes and how I do it, but they're doing it in their own way really well. So how do you talk a little bit about that, or share some stories about that, or maybe tips you have for that?
Yeah. So I started like that, and I really think it is a muscle, and it's something that you just have to keep doing, and you just get better at it and become okay with it. And so it was slow. So it was that first year I was able to just, for my own peace of mind, just keep making sure everyone was happy and following through on what my promises were to these families. Um, and then I was confident with her. So I'm like, okay, great. And then I started to bring in some more senior teachers to teach my older children at the studio. So, I was at a point, again, self-awareness is another big factor. And I was at a point where I'm like, I just don't feel like I can give these students who I've been teaching since they were, pretty much in nappies. They're
Mhm.
now our older teens. And so I feel like I need to bring someone in. And then, so I found some great teachers to come in, and again they were in there, and I just would set up a desk. It was a strange setup of the studio was, but I just sort of set up a desk at the end of the room and do work. But I mean, those poor teachers
Mhm.
having me sitting there watching it. But yeah, it was just I don't know, I was constantly worried. And then they were great and the kids loved it, and I'm like, okay, that's okay. That was one more step. So then I was able to move downstairs. And then when we started our first location, it was at a different location. These classes were actually being run by my cousin, who I grew up dancing with, and her mum was the one who owned the studio I grew up with. She had owned her own dance studio in it's our central coast, so about an hour away from where I am. And I still remember every at the end of every, so I know how great she is. I wouldn't have hired her, but she was so great. At the end of every day that she was teaching, I would go, "How was class? Was everything okay?" So again, it was at that next step. But then that became okay. She was doing a great job, and then it just continued. And now at my studio currently, there are people that don't know who I am, and I'm actually really okay with that. And I say to a lot of studio owners, it really becomes about you and how you feel. And so they're almost hung up on not being known, or
Mhm.
taking up. So I think it's just practice, and it's just doing it and becoming okay with it, and doing it slowly worked for me. Like if I had
Mhm.
just rushed in and stepped
Mhm.
back, I mean, I couldn't have done that, but I think that would be harder. But just slowly, just little bit
Mhm.
by little bit, and yeah, and hire smart.
Mhm.
Choose who you hire. I think makes a big difference as
Mhm.
well.
You said a lot of things there. And when you said you would check in even with your cousin, who you knew was a really good teacher, but you would still check in with her at the end, um, people might perceive that as micromanaging or being, not letting go of control. But there is that delicate balance of being available and training in and making sure that you, as a leader, are able to communicate with your people so that they know that you're available and that you have their back. There's a lot of people hire and then they don't allow that opportunity to train or to have that communication given, and that's where the wheels fall off the bus, and then we don't love our team and our team doesn't love working for us. So it sounds like you did that really well. You were super intentional with that, and I love that you went slow, like just really taking your time to bring in those people. Can we just speak how big is your studio, and tell everybody where you're located?
Yeah, so we're in Sydney, Australia. At our peak, we had 1,200 students, and we had 6 locations. I had just over 30 staff members, so teachers and staff. That was at our peak. We grew very fast, so we were growing at about 200 students a year. This was a very conscious decision that my husband and I made, that we were going to grow, and what we were doing was working. And yeah, got to this point, and it was running. So I was at this point not doing any teaching, so I had stepped right back. Actually, I might have been teaching our preschool, our babies, in the mornings, a couple of mornings a week. And yeah, and so it just got to the point where everything was running. And then one day I just started to feel like I again was spreading myself too thin. And I was starting to feel like I can't check in at this location to, even just to drop uniforms off, or someone needed this. And I thought to myself, okay, so at what point do you stop? At what
Mm,
point, and so for us, it was at that point, and we looked at each other, and our kids were in their next phase of life. So they were that little bit older. So things were starting to happen. And so I made a decision to consolidate. And so it was a conscious consolidation of the businesses. Now, surprisingly, that, you do lose a few because all of a sudden the location doesn't become
Yep.
as convenient. However, we didn't lose as many as I thought. And so at this point, we bought our own building, and we, that was all decked out. So
Mhm.
a lot of kids were able to come to that, or they moved to other locations, pretty close by.
Mhm.
Yeah, and same financially, you don't lose as much money as you think because your expenses are reduced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah. Right.
that phenomenon of, yeah. So, but
So,
right now, sorry.
yeah. So right now, yeah.
So right now, at the end of last year, I sold off a new area. So if I take a step back, we'd grown, we'd consolidated, and then about 6 years ago, I just said to my husband, I really feel like we need to just prove that, because I was starting to work with studio owners. That's why. So I started coaching them, and I just said, I feel like we need to just make sure that what we're teaching is still working. And I don't want to be promising these studio owners just do this and it will work, because 30 years ago
Mhm.
it's not the
Mhm.
same. And so we started another studio in a different location, and yeah, and it basically went in the 5 years, went from 0 to 250, and that was 2 years of COVID in that as well. that
Wow.
that studio was being completely run and managed by one of my senior teachers, and so she was doing that. She was obviously consulting with us, but we were letting her have creative control.
Mm.
We truly trusted her,
Mhm.
everything. And so at the end of last year, we sold that. And so we were sitting at about, I think about 900 students. So we sold off that. And I actually haven't done our count this year. So I'm thinking we probably had about 750. But I really do need to check in with my admin team. Numbers are really irrelevant to me. Like, yeah, it's a funny thing. The numbers just don't matter. I just know our classes are really full, and we have wait lists, and everyone's happy. So yeah, we're doing
Okay.
good.
Interesting to hear you say that as somebody who, because I know you're probably saying that facetiously because you're a business coach for studio owners. You help studio owners. I mean, we want to know our numbers. We want to know where things are at. I mean, but you're at a place where it's not like you're
Yeah.
totally losing sleep if you lose 10 students or 50 students or 100 students. So can you talk a little bit? Okay, so let's talk about that newer studio, because you wanted to test your philosophy on that. And this is a visibility podcast, and I love hearing different people talk about visibility strategies that work for them. For me, it's collaboration with other like-minded business owners. What is something for you, Jen Dalton? And you have different spokes of your business, so we can speak to that as well too. The different things, businesses that you have. What strategies are working for you, or that you find success with in getting your brand and name out there?
So I feel really grateful that we had the years of experience with the website starting early and the SEO starting early.
Yes.
It is still that successful because of consistency. And I know that's a really boring word, but it honestly is the underlying factor for everything. So I
Mhm.
look at, our brick and mortars, we're consistently updating, and the website, we are consistently on social media. We are consistently trying to stay one foot ahead of everybody else. It's just a matter of, I say, being relentless. Relentless comes across as a negative word, and I don't mean it as a negative word, but it's just about continuing even when you're not seeing the response, or you're
Mhm.
not feeling like people are seeing you. If you just keep going, it just happens. So that's exactly how we did it with our second brick and mortar that we started, from complete scratch. And as I said, the girl that took that on, all the credit to her for that, because she was just continually on. And this has been, reels were starting and videos were starting to become a big thing, and she just put herself out there.
Mhm.
she just continued to challenge herself, to challenge her comfort zone. And and she took it from 0 to 250 in the
Yeah.
5 years, which is a real credit to her.
Mhm.
For us now, we still do the same with our studio, with my businesses, that my other businesses that are newer. Same thing. It is just, and that was starting from zero again. And
Mhm.
and I'm now seeing the momentum of that now. It's
Mhm.
all just picking up. So that's for us. So I love that you talk about collaboration. And I was even saying to my husband how I just love some of your philosophies, and it's
Mhm.
being able to speak to someone having a different idea. I'm like, yeah, wow, I never actually thought of
Mhm.
that. So
Mhm.
we do a little bit of collaboration with other businesses not related to dance. So
Mhm.
the local cafe,
Mhm.
the local schools, we try and get in and do, classes there. We run discos there, things like that. So, but yeah,
Mhm.
that's pretty much it for us.
It's so funny because I preach the same thing here with the SEO and consistency. It's not really exciting. Like it's not flashy. It's kind of boring and you got to kind of do it all the time. And you don't see these huge bumps, but then all of a sudden you look up and 3 years later, you're like, and you look your numbers and you see the traction and you see the projection and you're going, oh my gosh, but it's just really that consistency factor. And I'm glad you leaned into SEO because that truly, I just really dialed in on that here. And that is something that nobody really talks about, that nobody really puts the energy behind talking about SEO, at least what I'm seeing. Everybody's flashy with the social media and the reels and the TikToks and all that stuff. But that SEO, people are Googling you. They're just where's the dance classes? Who's doing this kind of dance, or who's doing this kind of physical therapy, or where's the chiropractor that works with this kind of person?
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for. So I love that you spoke to that. And I didn't even tell her that, y'all. I didn't coach her to say that. So that's awesome. Okay. I do want to talk about though, and for those dance studios listening, you have a rec program, right? You said you had a rec
Yeah.
program, which that makes me so excited. Like I was just so happy to hear that because that's usually when people talk about big numbers like you have, they have a competition program or other things that bring in. So that's quite impressive.
Yeah, we do. And it's always been that way. And so when I started 30 years ago at 14 years old, it was actually a conscious decision, an intentional decision, which I wasn't aware it was an intentional decision now that I can look back. But I grew up doing the competitions and have no bad memories of it. But
Mm-hmm.
it actually came down to me not wanting to spend my weekends at a Stedford. and yeah, and
That's
so
exactly why I don't want to do it.
and so so basically I niched, and again that wasn't even a thing back then,
Right.
but it was. And the parents were hanging for it because there were a lot of studios around, and they're all fabulous studios, and
Mm-hmm.
the quality of dance was excellent. But I'm like, no, there's no competitions. There was no uniform back then. Like, it was just really just come have a great time.
Mm-hmm.
Still the same philosophy now,
Yeah.
just come. It was always about just developing a child. Everyone got to go in the front. um, Everyone was welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Before inclusivity became a,
Right.
a word, everyone was. And so I had a Down syndrome stream. I had a class of just kids, and they still to this day they've stolen my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I just love them. But yeah, just coming, seeing the joy. There was no stress. It was
Mm-hmm.
fun. And then they went home.
Yeah.
And it still is that now, 30 years later. There's obviously more studios that offer rec streams now. And there are a few studios that just do recreation. But again, I think just with our past, and still when they Google dance studios in our area, our studio comes up first
Yeah.
because of the SEO, because of all
Yeah.
the, every year updating the website. And
Yeah.
and we have low fees. Like, it's not over the top, so it can be done. And that's what I try and encourage business owners who, are feeling the pressure to do what other people are doing, or the only way to be successful is dot dot dot. I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be that way.
Oh, I love it. It's when I heard you say that for the first time, it was such a breath of fresh air, or just like a release off my shoulders. Cause I get, not that anybody's pressuring me, but people are like, Melissa, you're leaving so much money on the table by not doing competition. And it came down to your reason. Like, I just don't want to do my weekends. Like, I work a lot, days or evenings teaching, and I just, no. So we do a same thing with you, this beautiful rec program that I just love and have grown it for 15 years. So, I'm sure you have lots of milestones in your business where you have learned and said, wow, I am a badass. I can do anything. Do you have something that like comes to mind that is a moment or something that happened that you were like, I got this. I can do this.
Yeah. Again, at the time that it was happening, it didn't feel like that. But now that I look back, I can see. And probably the biggest thing was when I was, so computers were around. So it would have been sort of, here I'm trying to timestamp again.
Like 95-ish.
Yes, exactly. I started to think outside of what I was offering as a studio owner. And again, it wasn't an intentional, extra revenue stream. How can I, it was always about how can I make my studio as convenient as possible for the parents. That's what it always came down to, even before I was a parent. So I look back and go, that's weird. But yeah. And so I thought, okay, well, what would be helpful? So the first thing I thought, okay, what would be helpful? Supplying a uniform. So that might be helpful. So I just started Googling how to supply a uniform. I had a cousin who was, she's actually in beauty, and she had just started importing equipment. And I said, how did you do that? And she said, oh, I just went on to Alibaba.com. I'm like, oh, okay. And that's checked it out. And so all of a sudden I was starting this importing factor in my business, which I did. Again, it wasn't like, I wonder if I can import, or I wonder. It was just like, it just rolled, like the stone just kept rolling. And then all of a sudden, so I found some companies and I got them to send samples. And then I thought, what about shoes? Maybe I could actually make my own brand of shoes and sell them in the business. I'm like, and then I'm like, okay, how do I do that? And then I just started Googling. And then I found, people that made shoes, and they were sending samples. And so all of a sudden I'm sort of importing, and then I sort of look back and I go, how did I even do that? And then, so now we are in such a good place, financially, thankfully. But we still just import. I'm still using the same company to get some of our pieces that we all those years ago. So that was I look back and think that was a really big achievement. And that's probably one of the things I also credit my success to, is not listening so much to what everybody else is doing, but just continually trying to think about my customers, thinking about my families, and what could make their life a little bit easier, what could make their life a little bit better. And that's honestly how I keep going. So that was a big thing back young. Probably my next biggest achievement was starting my podcast, actually, I think. So again, that was just something I didn't have any clue really how to do. It's obviously a lot easier now because you can Google, but it was something I didn't really want to be asking people how. And yeah, so I just sort of did that, and I didn't even really tell my family. I just started, and every week there's been an episode every week. So I'm really proud of that as well.
Yeah. I love the nugget, that huge nugget of paying attention to your client, paying attention to your families, and what could you do to add value to them, for them. And smart women create value. And you just, like, creating your own brand of shoe, like, wow. that's a little, but making it easier for your family. Like, what are those things that you can do in any brick and mortar, that you just pay attention to who's coming in your doors, and really, really, who do you love working with? Who is that person, and what traits do they have? And do you do this, Jen? Like we intentionally sit down every year and like, who is that person and what are we missing to help them? Like as a team, I just sit with my leadership team and just like, how can we serve them a little better? What can we do? Um, do you do that with your team, with your leadership team? I would think you would.
Yeah, yeah, we do. So every year, well, we meet 4 times a year, but
Mhm.
our main meeting, yeah, we do. We sit down and we talk about even the changes in the children, the changes in the parents, and we
Mhm.
sort of I try and go a little bit deeper as to why. So I just love that question. Why do you think this is? Why did that person respond the way they did? I sort of just try and challenge them with the question of why. And that's where we tend to uncover,
Mhm.
possibly what's happening, but it also
Mhm.
just gives us a strategy or something to try or something to implement. And so far,
Mhm.
so good. And if
Mhm.
you're wrong, it doesn't really matter. We've given it a go and we start
Right.
again. We go back to the drawing
Right.
board.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I want you to just share a little bit about your $1 Million Dance Studio, um, the mastermind and the Business of Dance conference. Share everybody about that, and then
Yeah.
we'll wrap up.
Yeah. So about 7 years ago, maybe about 7 or 8 years. Really needed a big calendar of my life. Yeah, I started having studio owners come approach me and just say, "Do you mind sitting down for a coffee? I just, I'm seeing your success. I'm hearing about your success, and I just would love to know, struggling." And so I was more than happy to do that.
Yeah.
I still love doing that, and so that evolved into now where I'm coaching and spending, more time focusing on running the business of
Hmm.
dance.
Hmm.
I actually do work with a few other small business people as well who aren't actually in our industry, which is really exciting as well because that does
Yeah.
challenge me. Yeah, and so that's been my focus and sort of again consistency in that. There have of course been ups and downs, and there was COVID in the middle, but that momentum is just really picking up now.
Hmm.
And so then that led to more one-on-one coaching, which then led to um, almost a divide in the clients that I was working with. And so there were the newbies, the ones who were just starting, and then there were the ones who have been around for a while. Their studio's really big, and they were ready to take the next level. And so and so then it was like, okay, again, I'm listening to my people. Okay, there is now a need. I need to separate this, and so that's when I brought in the mastermind, which is our high level studio owners, and these are the girls who and guys. I just have girls at the moment, but the girls and guys who are they're ready. They're they're pushing that comfort zone. They're ready to invest. They know the power of investing, both
Hmm.
financially but also in time, because we are so limited with time. So they're smart enough to be able to move forward. They know they have to choose where they're going to invest, and
Yeah.
if they invest with me, then hopefully, so far so good, can help take them to that next level. And that's just by diving. It is. I feel like I own about 27 businesses because these studios, I'm just in their business, and we're meeting up one on one every week, and it's like, okay, what now? What's the next thing we can do? So that's really intimate and intense.
Hmm.
Those that mastermind, but they see results fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then on the flip side, the ones who are starting, it's just different languaging, it's
Yeah.
different strategies. We're working with different things. We got mindset at the top. Down here, we're still working on strategy, and I just I love watching the progression. I just love watching the hope. I just love watching or decisions. So sometimes they just need to make a decision that it's time to close or
Hmm.
sell,
Hmm.
and that is a thing too. And they don't have to feel bad about that. They're just ready for the next chapter, and that's
Hmm.
okay. And so then sometimes we're tidying up a business to sell, and so yeah, it's a big array. And so the Business of Dance conference. So this year's the first year I'm holding this, and it is a day just for dance entrepreneurs. So it's all business. I'm going to be bringing in the coaches and the mentors that I've used over the years. They're going to come in. We're going to talk strategy. Again, in the room, we're going to split. So there'll be,
Hmm.
talking to everyone, and then we'll be splitting. So splitting into the ones who are in the 5 year plus bracket and the starting people. just so we can really get in your strategies. We have some great dance festivals, conventions. We've got an expo starting this year for the first time where people are coming in, but this is just for the studio owner, the
Love
CEO
that.
who really wants to just take their business to the next level. So, and I'm really excited about connecting with them because it's different. It's different. And it's a funny business because we are creatives and we're business owners, and that sometimes doesn't mix well. So yeah, I feel like it's my mission to help those people.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And well done. Congrats on all your success on running a studio for over 30 years and then going into the $1 Million Dance Studio Mastermind and coaching. I've watched you start that and grow. And so it's fun to see that flourishing as well. So good luck with the Business of Dance Conference. To me, I would be right there. That is totally what I want. We are trying to do our regional one, create a regional one here because I think it's totally needed. It's totally needed. But any last nugget of wisdom for that female entrepreneur?
No, just keep going, but listen to yourself, like listen to your body. And if you do need to rest, you should be resting or slowing. I think where the pace of life is so fast right now and everyone's trying to keep up. And I think this is why so many people are getting to that point of burnout. And so, keep going, be consistent. It doesn't matter if you're not kicking goals every day, as long as you're walking onto the field. And yeah, you've got it. You've got this. They just have to keep remembering you've got this. And you can always make decisions. So, and it's okay to change your mind.
If you have not checked out the Dance Studio Empire, please check out Jen Dalton on her podcast. She does share a little bit, actually quite a bit. You share a little bit about burnout and just rest, and the importance of that has played into you and your journey. You have some kiddos that you talk about being a mom too, and your the way you parent them. And I love that, as that was inspiring to me. So, and even if you're not a dance studio owner, go check her out and take a listen. So, Jen, I appreciate you coming on the Brick and Mortar Visibility Podcast, sharing your wisdom, and especially helping us dance studio owners be even better. And I appreciate your new friendship, and I wish you all the best. We'll be in touch. I know we will. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Of course. Of course. All right, everybody. We will see you here, same time, same place next week. Peace. Bye-bye.